Earhart chose Harry Manning as her navigator, and he had been the captain of the President Roosevelt, the ship that had transported Earhart from Europe in 1928. Manning was also a pilot and a skilled radio operator who knew Morse code. The original plan was a two-person crew. Earhart would fly and Manning would navigate during a flight across the United States that included Earhart, Manning, and Putnam. Earhart flew using landmarks. She and Putnam knew where they were. Manning did a navigation fix that alarmed Putnam because Manning made a minor navigational error that put them in the wrong state. They were flying close to the state line, but Putnam was still concerned. Sometime later, Putnam and Mance arranged a night flight to test Manning's navigational skill. Under poor navigational conditions, Manning's position was off by 20 miles. Elegant M. and Marie K. Lone considered Manning's performance reasonable because it was within an acceptable error of 30 miles. But Mance and Putnam wanted a better navigator. This is Joseph, and this is True and Scary. We'll be right back with more of Amelia Earhart right after this. I'm Joseph. This is True and Scary. Through contacts in the Los Angeles aviation community, Fred Noonan was chosen as a second navigator because there were significant additional factors that had to be dealt with while using celestial navigation for aircraft. Noonan, a licensed ship's captain, was experienced in both marine and flight navigation. He had recently left Pan American World Airways, Pan Am, where he established most of the company's China Clipper seaplane routes across the Pacific Ocean. Noonan had also been responsible for training Pan America's navigators to fly the route between San Francisco and Manila. Under the original plans, Noonan would navigate from Hawaii to Howland Island. A difficult portion of the flight, then Manning would continue with Earhart to Australia, and she would proceed on her own for the remainder of the project. Citation needed. This is True and Scary. I am Joseph. We're talking about Amelia Earhart. Abandoned first attempt on March 17, 1937, Earhart and her crew set out on the first leg of her round-the-world flight. But they abandoned this attempt after a non-fatal crash that damaged the aircraft. The first leg of this attempt was between Oakland, California and Honolulu, Hawaii. The crew were Earhart, Noonan, Manning, and Mance, who was acting as Earhart's technical advisor. Due to problems with the propeller hub's variable pitch mechanisms, the aircraft needed servicing and was taken to the United States Navy Luke Field facility at Pearl Harbor. The flight resumed 3 days later from Luke Field with Earhart, Noonan, and Manning on board. The next destination was Howland Island, a small island in the Pacific. Manning, the radio operator, had made arrangements to use radio direction finding to home in the island. The flight never left Luke Field. During the takeoff run, there was an uncontrolled ground loop. The forward landing gear collapsed, both propellers hit the ground, and the plane skidded on its belly. The cause of the crash is not known. Some witnesses at Luke Field, including an Associated Press journalist, said they saw a tire blow. Earhart earlier thought the Electra's right tire had blown, and the rear right landing gear had collapsed. Some sources, including Mance, cited an error by Earhart, with the aircraft severely damaged. The attempt was abandoned and the aircraft was shipped to Lockheed Burbank, California for repairs. The second attempt, while the Electra was being repaired, Earhart and Putnam secured additional funds and prepared for a second attempt. In which they would fly west to east. The second attempt began with an unpublicized flight from Oakland to Miami, Florida. And after arriving there, Earhart announced her plans to circumnavigate the globe. The flight's opposite direction was partly the result of changes in global wind and weather patterns along the planned route since the earlier attempt. We'll be right back, children. True and Scary. I'm Joseph.
Welcome to True and Scary,
a podcast about true and scary stories from around the world.
Manning, the only skilled radio operator, had left the crew, which now consisted of Noonan and Earhart. The pair departed Miami on June 1st, and after numerous stops in South America, Africa, the Indian subcontinent, and Southeast Asia, arrived at Lae, New Guinea on June 29, 1937. At this stage, about 22,000 miles, 35,000 kilometers of the journey had been completed. The remaining 7,000 miles, 11,000 kilometers, would be over the Pacific. Citation needed. Flight between Lae and Holland Island on July 2nd, 1937 at 10 a.m. local time, 12 a.m. GMT, Earhart and Noonan took off from Lae Airfield in the heavily loaded Electra. Their destination was Holland Island, a flight sliver of land 6,500 feet, 2,000 miles long, and 1,600 feet, 500 miles wide, 10 feet, 3 miles high, and 2,556 miles, 2,221 NMI, 4,113 kilometers away, 147. The expected flight time was about 20 hours, according and accounting for the 2-hour time zone difference between Lae and Holland, and the crossing of the international date line. The aircraft was expected to arrive at Holland the morning of the next day, the 2nd July.
Welcome to True and Scary,
a podcast about true and scary stories from around the world.
The aircraft departed Leh with about 1,100 U.S. gallons, 4,200 liters of gasoline, in preparation for the trip to Hainan Island. The U.S. Coast Guard had sent the cutter USCGC Itasca 1929 to the island to offer communication and navigation support for the flight. The cutter was to communicate with Earhart's aircraft via radio transmit a homing signal to help the aviators locate Hainan Island, use radio direction finding, and use the cutter's boilers to create a dark column of smoke that could be seen over the horizon. All of the navigation methods failed to guide Earhart to Hainan Island. Around 3 p.m. late time, Earhart reported her altitude as 10,000 feet, 3,000 miles, but that they would reduce altitude due to the thick clouds. Around 5 p.m., Earhart reported her altitude as 7,000 feet, 2,100 miles, and speed as 150 kilometers, 280 kilometers high, 170 miles per hour. During Earhart and Noonan's approach to Hainan Island, Itasca received strong, clear voice transmissions from Earhart, identifying as Hakaga, Khaqq, but she was unable to hear her voice transmissions from the ship. The first calls received from Earhart were routine reports stating the weather was cloudy and overcast at 2:45 a.m. and just before 5 a.m. on July 2nd. These calls were broken up by static. But at this point, the aircraft was a long distance from Holland.
Welcome to True and Scary,
A podcast about true and scary stories from around the world.
I'm Joseph. This is part 2. We're concluding. Until next time, part 3, Amelia Earhart. Remember, children, don't be so scared.
Embark on a thrilling journey with Joseph as he uncovers the spine-chilling truth behind aliens and government cover-ups. Brace yourself for a roller coaster of true and scary stories from around the world that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew.